everyone. I welcome each one of you to this session, and today I'm going to tell you a very interesting story, the story of Proserpine. So, it is a Greek myth. Now, what is a myth? A myth is a narrative or story which tries to explain nature or natural phenomena or the mysteries of nature. So you all must have read or heard sometime about these interesting Greek myths, like the myth of Prometheus, who had stolen a fire from heaven, and he had challenged the gods. You must have heard about the myth of Pandora and Pandora's box. You must have read or heard the very popular Greek myth of Daedalus and his son Icarus, or the story of Proserpine, which I'm going to tell you today. So we all have, heard or read about these myths from ancient Roman civilization or Greek civilization, and our own Indian mythology has a rich treasure of interesting myths. So we must have read them in our childhood, or heard about them from our grandparents. That we did. Yeah. So today I'm going to tell you the Greek myth story of Proserpine. So let's get started. Hello. So let's get started with the story of Proserpine. Now, long ago, in the island town Sicily, lived a beautiful goddess named Ceres. Now, Ceres was the goddess of crops and grain and plants and trees. Yes, and with her activities, actually, with her, Ceres played a very significant role in making cultivation and agriculture, the growth of plants possible on the earth's surface. So with her significant and important role, all the inhabitants of the earth, the farmers, the people, everyone was happy only because of Ceres, because she made cultivation possible, without which, yes, people will not have food to eat. So now the story begins from here. Now Ceres had a fair, beautiful daughter named Proserpine. So, and she loved her more than her own life. And she was one of the loveliest of girls. Her cheeks were rosy and beautiful like the apple. Her eyes were as blue as the blue sky. In April, her long golden curls of hair were as bright as the sunlight in springtime. So that's how the description goes of Proserpine, the fair daughter of goddess Ceres. Now, everybody said she is the spring because she was as beautiful as spring. And when she smiled, the flowers the flowers and plants and leaves turned beautiful, and they smiled too. So people compared her to the season of spring. But as every happy and beautiful story has this negative character, this antagonist. So here also we have Pluto, who is the god of the underworld, the god of death. So far down the earth there lived dark Pluto, the king of the land of the dead. He had often asked, now Pluto wanted a companion, and he had always asked and requested and proposed to all these goddesses, but none of the goddesses accepted his proposal, because none of them wanted to go and live down in the core of the earth, down below, yes, in the underworld. So none of the goddesses accepted his love proposal or his marriage proposal. So one day Pluto came to earth for some of his or maybe for a drive. So he was riding his chariot, and behind some bushes, somewhere in the forest, he heard the voices of some girls, and he heard the voices of laughter. So Pluto became curious, and he he went ahead to find out who these girls were. And he was struck by the charm of this young girl, Proserpine, and he looked at Proserpine and thought that this is the lady whom I want as my queen. This is the girl whom I want to marry, and who should be my a partner for life. And having thought that, he went ahead and he carried her off in his chariot and took her straight to his home, that is to the underworld. The companions of Proserpine were frightened, and they fled in all the directions. And Pluto departed with the captive maiden in his chariot. And in the evening, when Ceres, after spreading joy and after looking after all the cultivation fields and everything, when she returns home, the first thing that she did every day was to meet and talk to her daughter. So when she reached home in the evening and she called for her daughter, there was no answer. So she was very anxious. She was very tense. And then she came to know from her companions what had happened, that Pluto had captured a girl. And here was Pluto, how he took her down below the earth. He carried her in his chariot, and the ground opened at once. When he used his scepter, the magic wand of his, the symbol of power. So when he pointed his scepter at the sea, the ground opened, and his chariot, horses, and all plunged into the darkness below, and the ground closed open. So that is how he carried the girl into the underworld. And when Proserpine came to know that her daughter was missing, she became furious with anger and grief and pain and sadness, and she didn't know what to do. So thus a mother and daughter got separated, and that too because of this, the plan of Pluto. Proserpine was still an intelligent girl. What she did is, she was wearing a girdle, a belt of sort. So she took out the girdle because she thought that I should leave some sign back so that my mother, Ceres, can find me and can reach me somehow. So she she flung the girdle, back to the land. Just before the chariot was plunging into the darkness underworld, she flung the girdle back to the land, and the girdle was lying on the shore, on the seashore. So that was the only sign that was, which was left back by Proserpine for her mother. So let's see if Ceres can reach out to her daughter. Wait for the next one.